Black Desert Online is a very, very strange game in that it's a Korean MMO. So for Korean MMOs, it's really not that different. For every other game we have in the West, it's really strange. Because it's kind of a mix between Skyrim, Street Fighter, The Witcher, and Animal Crossing. That's probably the closest I could get to it. And so, in many ways, it can engage you on a lot of different levels. And the good thing about this game is that you don't have to do everything in the game to progress. You can actually pick one or two things that you like and progress the entire game through it. However, I'll be going at this less from a PvP angle and more from a roleplay angle, because that's kind of what a lot of my friends have been really pushing into, and those are the people I want to convince, because that's who this video is for. But first, we're going to go to the combat. Now, the combat is very free-flowing, and that's kind of why I thought of The Witcher when I've been playing this, especially with the warrior class and soon to be the blader class coming out. It's very reliant on combos, but as you can see, I don't do a lot of combos. I should do a lot of combos, but I don't, and I get by perfectly fine. So there's a certain level where you can get really good at it, but even if you're not great at it, it's still fun, it still works, and you can just keep doing it. As expected, there is no issue with the graphics that I've seen, however, except for one minor thing, which is pop-in, meaning that things will suddenly, boom, they'll load about when you're 5 feet away from it. That's a bit of an issue when you're running. It doesn't happen too often though, it's not that big of a deal. Based on what you get, I'm fine with it. Not that big of a deal. However, if it really bothers you, it's still all present on all the other settings, including medium, which, this is all on medium settings, looks really good. Still looks really great, I think, and it looks much better than most of the MMOs out there. Even Elder Scrolls, I'm sorry, it is a beautiful game, but this is, I think, still far above it. It works really well, the performance is great, there was no issues on launch. Now, if you're really bad, you can always go to optimization. Oh god, no, put it away, get the Goblin Jester. Goblin Jester. Ah. It's adorable. Okay, sorry. So, this is the weird part. I feel like I should get into the weird part of Black Desert Online. Basically the things that are in no other game. So, first off is residence, lodging, storage, all of this part of it, where this is kind of how you do a lot of your crafting. Not all of it, but let's say you're making earrings or armor or chairs or things like that. You're usually going to be using kind of workshops. So there's tons of rooms and places that you can invest in or buy in a city, and all of them can be used for different things. So sometimes it's storage, which every city has storage. You increase the storage, there you go, you get more spots there, which is kind of helpful. You can make costumes just like that, that'll help you with your gathering or fishing. You can create all sorts of furniture, which is pretty handy for role players. It's pretty handy. Anybody else, it's not. It technically increases your interior score, which even if you're not into roleplay, you can kind of, try to get into the top spot, which is nice, but I don't expect a whole lot of people to be interested in. But I've been wrong before. But overall, there are so many options there that you can look at. And if you look, see, when you walk in, it's all right there in the city. So it's not just a thing on a map. These are actual places in the game that you can walk in. So let's say I bought this as my residence, I could get some chandeliers, put some lights in there, put all sorts of stuff. Some of the locations are also really cool. So this could be a really neat shop because it has a sign already. And in this one, if you actually see what you can do inside, that's what it looks like when you do a very good job of decorating it. I think that's pretty awesome. Arcade tried to do a lot of the housing, but everything was all crunched together and it was all kind of, it didn't seem right. It didn't feel realistic at all. This, they've actually put it all into the cities. So you'll be walking through the city, open a door, and that's your house or apartment. It's really great. So if you want to invest in these things, you have to have contribution points. You get contribution points through contribution XP. You get contribution XP through questing. Now, questing is pretty easy. As you can see, each quest even has, usually at least, an icon that will take you directly to the area you have to be in to complete the quest. And the ones that don't, again, they have pretty decent descriptions to show you how to do it. The key thing to remember is that if it says contribution XP, it's just doing contribution XP. It's not leveling you up, it's just affecting that bar. When that bar gets all the way up, you get another contribution point, and it just keeps going and going and going and going and going. Once you hit, I think, 150, then the XP decreases quite a bit. Energy is also very important. That's how when you process ore, when you do things like that, you need energy. So one of the reasons that energy is so important is due to the complexity of the crafting system. So for example, when you're gathering resources, whether it's through farming or mining or anything like that, it's not a matter where you gather the resources and then you put them together and then you make a final product. It's something where you gather the resources, then you process them, then you combine them with other processed resources, and then you create a subcomponent. Then you take 4 of those subcomponents and you create a final product. The thing is that all of those stages cost energy. And each point of energy takes about 3 minutes to recharge. So what's going to happen is eventually you're going to run into a wall. However, once you're out of energy, you can fish, you can do combat, you can quest. All of those things don't require energy at all. So instead of saying, well, I'm sorry, you're out of energy, you have to stop playing the game, what it says more is that you're out of energy, you might want to focus on something else. And as far as energy is concerned, you can always get more. Certain quests will allow you to recover your energy, and also just going through the world and talking to people and exploring things will actually increase your max capacity for energy. Now, there are ways to craft and gather that don't require energy, however, that requires that we go to the map. And that map can seem a little daunting to people who have not seen it before, primarily me, and other people as well. But it's a little easier to deal with and wrap your head around once you get an idea that all of those symbols are basically points of interest. They're forests, they're, gates, they're cities, there's all sorts of stuff, farms, mines, caves, all of that stuff. And all of those things can be invested in. Now, in many cases, some of them are just to be invested in so you can create trade routes. So you can buy something in Velia and bring it to Heidel and then get money and XP for it. But also, some of these nodes, like the Coastal Cave, have resources in them. And so once you invest in those resources, or rather invest in those nodes, then you can bring your workers that you just get from an NPC in the city to work there. So instead of going around and mining all day and using up all the energy, you can send your workers there to mine it instead. And it makes it a little easier. It also is something where all of a sudden you'll have hundreds of iron ore or copper ore, and it all goes into your storage in the city. So right there. So it actually works out really well, and none of that costs energy. However, it does cost contribution points. So contribution points are really, really important. So let's say, in this case, we want to get mushrooms. Just for some reason, we want to get mushrooms, but it's saying we have to go to the node manager before we can do this. So fortunately, we happen to be right there next to the node manager. So if you want to do that, you go to the location, you talk to the node manager, and you go to this screen. And in this case, we already have the main one done. So in this case, we only want to go click on the one with the mushrooms, pay them the contribution points that we have, and then it's ready. And we can assign a worker to that anytime we want. Not right now, because we don't care right now. But that's how it works. So an underappreciated part of the game, though, aside from everything else that's new and impressive and that we haven't really seen before, is the interaction with the environment. In this case, you walk back against kind of a wall, even if it's around waist height. You lean against it. You walk back against a crate, you sit on it. I mean, this isn't like, only specifically for chairs and houses at this area. This is just something out in the middle of the city that you're walking back against it and you can sit down and hit Q, and you can use all these different poses, whatever would suit your character best. This is something that's just really neat that they didn't need to do, that a lot of people would have bought the game anyway. but they did it. Now, there's no walk toggle. You have to hold down caps lock right now, or, whatever key you end up binding it to in order to walk, but it's still really nice. It's still a good idea. Now, there's emotes as well, and as I'm going through that, I'll just let that kind of happen on the screen because I do want to mention something really quickly about the story and the lore of the game. Because for roleplay, it's important. The story is not really well done. I'm not saying it's a bad story, it's a perfectly fine story, but through translation and a lot of other things, it doesn't come across maybe as well as some people might like. The lore itself, though, is very impressive, and more importantly, it creates a world that you can create all sorts of characters in. There's lots of warring nations, cities that hate each other, nobles, commoners, class disputes. I mean, there's a whole religious aspect to it. It's really impressive in terms of what kind of characters you can create and what kind of conflicts you can put into. And I think that really can't be underestimated. It's very good in that sense. So there's some concerns also about open world PvP in this game. However, key thing to note is that it's kind of opt-in because it doesn't start until level 45. So you can have a low to mid-level roleplay character. You won't be restricted from any outfits, and you can kind of avoid it entirely if you want to. Overall though, it's just a great game, and I recommend everyone give it a shot.